Ladies and gentlemen, it is that time of year that Accuweather has released their fall 2025 forecast. And as a Tucson meteorologist, we will be reacting to that and giving you my personal twists, takes, agreements, disagreements on Accuweather's fall forecast. All right. In the past, I really do agree with Accuweather. I think they do a great job, but I don't think they do the best in the Southwest, in my opinion. I mean, they are based on the East Coast, so I'm gonna go ahead and give you my takes, what to expect this fall. Really, end the monsoon season, so it's end of September, pretty much through December. So let's hop into it.
Will they have? And can you talk about those?
Yeah, there's several actually factors that are going to go into this forecast. We've been putting this together for the last couple of months. I think the main one is, first of all, we got to look at the tropics. Everything's still wide open here along the Gulf Coast and the Southeast Coast for a possible hit going into the fall season. So that's going to be a focus point. We've had an active jet stream farther displaced.
All right, we transition to our first graph. It's called the transition to fall. The red highlights a slower transition to fall, while the blue highlights a faster transition to the fall. As you can see, the Southwest, as well as the West and parts of the East Coast, have a slower transition to fall. Now, that is going to be caused due to our drier soil temperatures. The heat, La Nina is also playing a huge factor, just keeping that ridge over us. Think about, you have drier soils. The air is going to be more dry. It's going to heat up faster, right? Now, that means higher daytimes, but it does give us a little more relief at nighttime. Not every week, but when we're in that transition week, I mean, the same thing will happen, right? You'll have higher highs, lower lows, right? We might see a couple degrees below average for our lows and a couple degrees above average for our highs. So basically the takeaway is we're gonna have a bigger temperature fluctuations between our daytime highs and our lows because we are bone dry right now. We had no winter rain this past season, and we've barely had a monsoon season.
To the north, which would bring more moisture into Canada and the Northwest, keeping things drier for much of the western part of the United States, so you can see warmer than average temperatures as well. I think that's going to be a big factor. And then the dip. How big is the dip as you get farther east to when the cool downs will come that we normally see in the fall? Yeah, and we just talked about how it could be warmer than average in the western U.S., and I think the transition from places like Nevada, California, Utah is going to be a lot slower going into that fall season feeling across those areas. But the dip that takes place over the upper Midwest and northern plains states happen again, more of the focus of the...
All right, now they drop their temperature departures. Historic averages September through November, okay? That lighter shade of yellow is going to be 1 to 2. That mild shade is going to be 2 to 3, 3 and higher. Now, the state of Arizona, we have 2 shades of where we are in southern Arizona, 1 to 2 degrees, historically above average. Northwestern, about 2 to 3. So, especially after the historic last fall, this fall is obviously going to feel way cooler. And just like some of the summers felt like, oh, it's been below average temperatures, it's going to feel the same, right? We will take a 1 to 2 degrees any day over what we had last fall. Last fall, we saw brutal heat all the way until the end of October. And I really don't believe we'll see that this year. I think we'll see it probably a more usual fall, but due to historic averages, we will still be a degree to 2 above average.
Warmth is in the western U.S. If you look back at last year, we tied 2016 for the warmest fall season on record. Most of the country should be above average coming up here, but these ups and downs will keep you at bay here, maybe in Chicago, Minneapolis. The front side's warmer probably than the back side in this.
Fall, what is the long-range team looking at for severe weather risks?
Yeah, it's not out of the picture yet.
All right, we now get into the severe weather risk from September to November 2025. Now, you might be like, why did you pause the video? There's nothing to talk about. We are far from the severe weather index on here. In fact, very far. It doesn't really get moderate until you go east to Dallas. Now, honestly, really what I call it is tropical storm season for Arizona, for southern Arizona. You know, every once in a while we'll get a system that comes up from the end of October. I'm sorry, from the end of August till like the end of October. It's your really fair game that you could get something that rushes up right here and either comes off here or kind of goes crashes into the Baja and into southern Arizona. It is rare, but it isn't something that could not happen. So that is a possibility to watch out for. But after monsoon season, we're very dry, so we'll have to keep an eye out for that.
I think the tornado outlook may be up and down, maybe lower than the fall season because of what we've seen so far in the summer and the late spring. There's areas that are just vulnerable, okay? It's not going to take much to cause flooding, and that area is like the Tennessee Valley, the Central Appalachians, and even along the Gulf Coast being enhanced by any tropical activity that could come into this region. We're still watching here in August that's getting a little busy, right? You just talked about that a little while ago. It's going to take much to spring. There's areas that are just vulnerable, okay?
Okay. We're going to go to the flood forecast, September through November. We talked about the East Coast, the Gulf. Now, why is there a huge section over the Southwest? And that is due to our dry and bone soil. Think about concrete, right? We've had barely any rain in the last year, and these soils temperatures are so high and they're so bone dry. So when it rains, it pours, it's going to act like a concrete, like a street, and it's just going to take the water downhill, as well as the fire burns, all the fires we've had in eastern Arizona, western New Mexico, over not just this summer, but the last year, is also going to help contribute to that flood forecast threat, especially if we do tap into one of those tropical storms. It could cause a lot of flooding.
It's not going to take much to cause flooding, and that area is like the Tennessee Valley as well.
And Paul, let's end on a positive note. Although I'm not a snow lover, I'm speaking for everybody else who is. Who could see some of the first snow this fall season?
Well, I'm looking, it's always the mountains of the Northwest, the interior Northwest. Yes, they see it a little bit earlier, late September.
All right, now we're talking about the first possible measurable snow. It's hard to talk about this August 9th when we have temperatures 110 out. But let's go ahead and, let's have some fun with this. As you can see on the map, Tucson or southern Arizona, nowhere near on this map. In fact, it's just they cover just the northern part of the United States, right? I mean, Columbus, like early December, these places will have snow, Kansas City. Now, in terms of southern Arizona, with La Nina, we are predicting a late start to our winter rains as well as snowfall. So Mount Lemmon, Graham, right? The historic places to get snow in southern Arizona, we're anticipating a later start. And in terms of precipitation right now, we are leaning drier on that. We are in a La Nina trend. Now, will it be as dry as last winter? I really don't know, especially if we continue this really dry summer. Forecasting Tucson and Arizona for the last 8 years, historically, even with the La Nina and El Nino, I really see a flip-flop in seasons. To say, for example, we have a very wet monsoon season. We could have a very dry summer. If we have a very dry summer, we could have a very wet monsoon season. Now, we rarely ever see 2 dry periods in a row. I've seen 2 wet periods in a row, but this would be the first time forecasting a very dry winter and a very dry summer. And I don't think that will happen the 3rd consecutive period, especially in southern Arizona. We do have 2 rainy seasons. Our winter season was basically a bust. Our summer monsoon season, for the most part, has been a bust. I really don't see that trend continuing into the winter as you might see on the National Weather Service below average precipitation. I don't think it's going to mean 0 like last year. I think we may have a delayed start, but I think we'll be better. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Early October. That's about normal, though, okay? That's about average. It's farther across the northern plains, upper Midwest. They may see it about a week or 2 earlier than average. Like I said earlier, Bismarck averages around the fall season. It's a big flip, and I think that's what we're going to see is a big transition.
Okay, and then as we trend towards the end of this video, people might be asking, will we be above snowfall this year or below? Honestly, it's too early to tell. Last La Nina we had, they were projecting below average. We had above, and I'm talking about those. We had above, and historically in Arizona, it is below. But our last two rainy periods have been very dry. The winter as well as the summer of 2025 so far. You know, we have about another month and a half of monsoon season. We'll see how that plays out. But that's also going to be a factor in my opinion. Right now, early, I would say we will lean below average, but slightly below average. Honestly, closer to the average in my opinion. So we'll just have to wait and see. So that's a fall forecast for the Southern Arizona Weather Network. Thank you for taking the time to watch. And we will be back here if anything changes, or in my opinion, if anything changes. We'll just have to keep an eye out. Thank you for watching.